Hi, Greg from Curry Country Living. Well, today I was going to start this video out by shutting down my Polar wood stove furnace. I had just made a trip up to Stonewall and talked to Trav, but I had some complications, and we'll take a look at that right now. So today is May the 15th, isn't it, Lucy? May the 15th, 2022. And we had gone into Winnipeg Stonewall to talk to Travis about how he cleans his Polar G2 Plus down. And I was thinking that we're getting into weather where I could clean the stove up for the last time, but when I woke up the Saturday morning, we'd had some shear winds or some pretty heavy winds. And it totally took out my wood bin shed and the shed that went over top of my Polar wood stove. Now granted, these buildings weren't secured real tight, but they've been here for almost 20 years. In fact, they were here when we had a tornado in 2005, and that tornado didn't bother these buildings. So financially, I'm not out a whole bunch. The buildings were old buildings that I had just used from around the yard and modified for my own purposes. But I had spent quite a bit of time getting them there, so I'm out a bunch of time. But basically the shear winds came in and just lifted this shed, and it must have been right over top of my wood stove because the wood stove was untouched, which I'm pretty grateful for. But took the chimney right off from the Polar, lifted it up, and just kind of threw things all around. So in this video, I'd like to take you up to Stonewall to talk to Travis, and we're going to be talking about the Polar and how to shut it down for the season. I think I'm to that point almost on mine. It's still running right now. I've lowered the temperature of the water to basically just because I don't need the kind of heat right now this time of year. When the wind came in from that storm a couple of days ago, like I say, it just lifted the piping and building right off the Polar. I had a switch right here that I was able to turn the lights on inside the building and whatnot, just rip the wires out. But yeah, let's go up to Stonewall and talk to Trav and see how he shuts down his Polar wood stove. Welcome to Curry Country Living. It was a year ago, Trav, that you and I got together and talked about the Polar G2 Plus, and I've got a year under my belt now, and I would like to close it down, clean it up for the year. So I'm going to get you to go through what you do and take it from there.
So yeah, we'll start with the first part that I like to go to is go straight to the turbulator department. And so right here you'll have your top cover, which will be covered by your piece of fiberglass insulation, and then that gives you full access to the top chamber without anything special. You're able to, here I'll shine some light in. So this is approximately 4 months since I last vacuumed this out. It's really not all that bad. Turbulators move without any drag, and that's using semi-seasoned wood. It's not the best, but the whole idea is you don't let your coal bed out and you shouldn't have any issues.
So can you maybe put it back together, Trav, now that we've looked at that and they can see how that part works. I haven't had mine off yet, but I know it's the same kind of lock hook system as
Yeah, so that piece of metal right there will latch with the hook underneath. There. So then the next step would be to put your fiberglass back on. And then you have your cladding.
So how does this procedure compare to something like the heat master set? Like, is it?
So the older G series that they had, it was much harder to access, but I know their newer model, you can remove a piece of tin
Right.
to access the top chamber, but you can't get any easier than what we just showed you.
No, no. So we've looked at the turbulators. We talked a little bit about the easy sweep, but I know on mine this year, whenever I loaded, I would give that 4 or 5 sweeps, and then whenever I loaded at night, I would give, every time I loaded, I basically did it. And I think that's just a common practice with
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, you can do it with one finger. It's all balanced, so there is no trying to ram the rod up and down. It's just simple, and you got that many more spirals to help clean extra surface area.
Yep.
And then being that it's more so like a spring, anything that is there, it actually the vibration of you going up and down is able to knock crud off the wall, wall of the heat exchanger.
Right. And then underneath the turbulators, I don't know if you want to take a look at the side. I know I've had mine off once this year, and more out of curiosity than anything. Just hold that right there, Trap. I'm just going to move around. So right now we're looking at the underneath the turbulators, Trap. I know I've had mine off. How long has it been since you've cleaned this one? So
underneath, I haven't touched this for about another 4 months. I did everything roughly around the same time. Just did my fan, did the side clean out, which really you can get most of the ash from the front anyway, just to get rid of anything that you wouldn't be able to reach.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I did the turbulators all at the same time.
And I think you can, if you move the turbulators, yeah. So you can see the ash coming down there right now. So that's why it's important to do that. It just brings that fly ash down and cleans them out. So that's the bottom part. And again, that door is the same idea as what we were just doing on top. Like, it's just kind of a hook and turn.
Yeah, it's all simple, no special tools. I make sure everything's tight that way, get no air leaks.
Yeah. And with you have this in your garage, so we'll maybe leave the fan to the end, and I know you have a new one out front that's easier. You can get at your fan there, it's just not very convenient, and
just the layout of the garage, didn't want to sacrifice any extra space I could use for my skid steer.
Yeah.
And
so we can show you can show me what you do with the fan out on a new one, so that I have an idea what I'm doing at home. So now we're going to go to the front.
Yeah, we can go through the gaskets now, and
yeah.
So I have the switch off. I did have this going the other day. I started up when we had a good plus 20 Celsius, which would be around 70 Fahrenheit for the American folks, and pretty well. We had a few gloomy days, so decided to fire it up. Nothing. I don't clean it out till I know all the weather is leveled.
Yeah.
So right here, you have your latch adjustment on both the left, and you also have a door adjustment with these carriage bolts on the right, both the top and bottom. So you can evenly every year I'd say to adjust these, even when you buy it new, adjust it to a nice firm feeling. Typically everything should be adjusted at that point, but it's good to go through everything because any air leak will offset your whole entire ratio. So that would affect your secondary combustion, and also any air entering when it's in the idle phase it would be smoldering. So you're plugging up the stove that you've worked so hard to keep the flame clean and keep the secondary combustion going, and it's a waste of fuel. So
so the seal on this one, so you can adjust it with those little points that you talked about.
Yep.
And then what do you look for in the seal itself?
So this seal will have about a season and a half on it. At the end of the year, what I'll do is I'll scrape all the flaky creosote off, which would be here. It's like just with it's quite simple. And then if to avoid having to change your gasket after a couple of years, when the gasket starts getting harder, you could even add high temperature silicone, and that'll seal just as well as these rope gaskets. Yeah. So you simply put high temperature silicone. You can do that from brand new if you want, but you will want to give it approximately 3 to 4 days to dry, so then it doesn't stick to the face of your boiler.
And then just talking about the pre-salt a little bit more, like I know you just scrape off when you're done burning for the season, which I am. You're still burning a little bit, but I'm done for the season. Like I'll just scrape off the creosote around the door, check my gasket, do any adjustments on the door that I think I need to keep it tight. Do you have any tricks, like how do you tell if it is leaking a little bit when you're firing the stove up?
So you can use a rag with WD-40 on it, light it, and then go around your door when the fan's on high. You can do it that way. Other than that, if your gasket isn't sealing right, then you will get a little bit of black soot kind of around here.
Right on the gasket?
Right around here, which I at one point didn't have it fully adjusted, but it's a 5-minute job. Got it fully set, and now so a guy could clean this up, and if that happens again, then he knows that the gasket needs to be adjusted. But really, it's an annual maintenance on any boiler.
So just before we go to the other doors, I know I've got that light in the background, and I'd mentioned to you that was something that, and it's a kind of a 50-50 thing you were telling me. With the light switch, like when I go into mine, I have to go to the side to turn the light on and then come back. And I said I kind of wish there was a switch right close, which you can explain the discussion that we had just when I mentioned that to you.
So pretty well, yeah, it's a 50-50, you know, like when it all comes down to it, that you have to go sweep your stove every cycle anyway, and you should be checking your gauges. Your exhaust temperature will tell you a lot too. So if your combustion should reach, you'll get to know your stove over time. From new, it'll be quite a bit lower than when it starts getting broken in, per se, where the ash will start going around your heat exchange surfaces. So it's just good to overall check your pumps every once in a while, make sure your fittings are fine. So being that I have it indoors, I don't even use the light bulb, but teach your own, I guess.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, Trav, I put a light switch on the far side of mine, so when I walk in, I turn the building lights on right off the stove, and that's what works for me. So, but anyway, we'll carry on with the other doors. I think basically gaskets and adjustment is what you're looking for on them. Yep.
Yeah, that's all you'll be looking for, and see, it's all smooth, one-hand operation.
Yeah.
So this is the second clean out. This will be your ignition door. So when you first start the fire, you're able to access directly to the nozzle, light your charcoal, your cardboard, whatever you have.
And I found I didn't use mine much at all for it. Basically, it never went out. So I know sometimes I would lose my coal bed, but there was always coals there to start the fire.
So another reason for this middle door too is you're able to scoop the ash directly from the middle. So at end of the year, you don't have to have your whole body inside the top chamber trying to get everything clean. Then you got your smaller tool, so you aren't breathing in that creosote smell. You aren't going to smell like a campfire when you're done. And on top of that too, you can leave your fan running, so it's sucking all the ash in and out the chimney while you're doing your clean out. So you get no airborne material in your...
I don't know whether there's a reason for it or not, but there's notches on that shovel. Like there's notches at the end. Is there a reason? Did you see how they have like there's notches right here?
Yeah.
The way it's designed?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, there's really no reason for it,
Okay.
for
Just
what
an
I can see.
So,
Maybe a design aesthetic.
so I think on my stove I was cleaning out. Well, it depends on how much you're burning, right, on the bottom one. But on your bottom chamber, on where the reaction happens, maybe go through what you do there. But basically, all the doors are kind of the same with the gaskets and the adjustments. I think I'm correct on that.
Yep, all doors are adjusted in the same fashion. You got your carriage bolts on this side, so you have to loosen right at this end to push the hinge side of your door in.
Yep.
And then, so before we move on though, the other reason why I like using this chamber is you're actually able to get your poker tool right into the corners, right around the edges, to prevent any of that like hard creosote from developing on the side walls.
Right.
So I have it right full of wood, so not a perfect example, but...
How high would you let your ashes get? I know sometimes I thought I was getting mine too high. Like, would you let the ashes get to the top of this door here? Like to the top of...
I usually let it go up. Because I push my ash down every couple days. I'll push some down the nozzle.
Okay.
So typically I'd have it right level with this ledge.
Okay.
And then, but anytime I'd get that high, I'd just push some down.
Yeah.
So this bottom chamber, you see how much ash I have down there. It doesn't affect the burn. I still get clean, zero smoke in operation. So what I do is I use a large dustpan. I'll wedge it between there, and usually one pan full is all you need for maintenance in hard burning scenarios, about every 3-4 days.
So twice a week.
Yeah, about that. You can see a little bit of charcoal I pushed down there.
Yeah.
But that most of it burns if you leave it down there long enough. I only had it a 2-hour fire yesterday, so.
And then you're just pulling from the sides too, and any of that fly ash that comes out. And that's the kind of fly ash you don't see any of that charcoal. When I cleaned my side door out, you didn't see any charcoal. With all that fly ash, it gets to the back.
Yeah, and I just left over that I can't fit, I just pull to the front.
Yeah.
And throw it out. So every month I'll just clean up whatever ash falls down, but really it doesn't get all that messy. You don't see a bunch of airborne ash flying around. It's quite clean. And better than the old wood furnace. Like.
Yeah. I'm going to show me how I can pull my fan off at home.
Yep.
And this is what it's going to look like. But while we've got this one out, you want to talk about what you're looking for when we get in there?
So yeah, when you clean out your boiler and then you take your fan out, what you want to do is you want to be taking a look at all these fins, making sure they're all like nothing's loose, they're all sturdy, and you'll take a flat scraper and scrape both sides, because it's like a tire, you don't want it unbalanced. If you scrape all but one side, then you could have caked on the back end, more so on the other side. That's where your vibration comes from. That's where your bearings go.
Yeah. When it's doing a proper job, is around that 300 degrees?
It'll be as low as about 260, 240 at the very, like your first couple burns.
Yeah.
And then after everything gets broken in, it'll climb up to around that 270 mark, and that'll usually be where it'll cruise.
Yeah.
And then, but in hard burns, it'll go up to usually max 300, and that's all I've ever seen.
It's 300.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I texted you this winter, because I was worried about that, is I had mine way higher than that. But if you open up the door and the smoke bypass, and if you get a little bit of flame going through, that's gonna crank your. So that was something I never even thought of. So if you see your temperature spiking, and it was just after you load it and you got a shot of flame in there, that's probably what's putting it up.
Exactly. So when you open up that door and you have flames curling, like this smoke extraction works really good. You'll actually have the flames curling right into the smoke extraction. That'll set off your max, on your adjustment. Yeah. It'll say, oh, your flue got up to 400, but in reality it only got up to 400 during that brief time that you open up the door. Yeah. But so yeah, I could see how that could. Yeah. So every year you'll want to take a water sample and send it off to the manufacturer. They will tell you if you need any more boiler treatment. So the boiler treatment, usual maintenance, you'll have to add a couple cups every year. Okay. And that this will evaporate over time, which actually ends up protecting your system that isn't exposed to the water. The vapor itself will protect the metal. So where, so sending that water sample, I think the address is in the book, but is it go to PA, or where does Yes, so yeah, for Polar and Portage and Main, it goes to the head office at Heat Smart Plus in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Is that same for the American people that have stoves? It's sent all to Prince Albert. Okay. And if they, of course, dealers carry the additive. If they need it. So when you first fire up your boiler, where you have fresh water in there, you don't have any treatment at all. For a G2 Plus, you'll need to use 1 full gallon. So these are half-gallon jugs. You will be getting the full gallon. This is just what I have right now. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and then this is just your little container. A water bottle is enough that you can, whatever you have, small enough you can mail away. Okay. Well, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed that video, consider giving me a thumbs up, subscribing to the channel, Curry Country Living, or if you have any questions, leave some in the comment section below. Right now, I am going to turn off my Polar wood stove for the season, and I'm going to go through some of the stuff that Trav is showing me. And we didn't get into the fan. Between what Trav showed me up in Stonewall and what I know about my own, we'll be doing that in the next episode. And the other thing that you may be interested in is what to do if your turbulators get seized on you. And this was my own fault. If you're looking for more information, catch the next episode. As always, take care, and we'll catch you next time.